The green flag's down. The drivers are on their way, looking at a pretty even field start with both of our front row sitters, Michelle Spork and that number 75 Porsche. Gonna try and lead them off through turn number 1. However, got a challenge from Crab on the outside. However, he's got a 3-wide fight on his hands now between himself, Kyle Robertson, and Jake Sneddon. Looks like those drivers are gonna try and single file out with a spinner farther in the back. That's one of the Aston Maunz going for a spin. I'm not sure who that is. That, I believe, may be Tyler Heron in the number 11 car. He is going off the circuit, hanging through turn number 1, so that's not an ideal start for him. All right, losing out on 6 spots, but as you can see the field coming out of turn number 5, under the bridge through 6 for the first time by, looking like most of the field is fairly. They're going to be bending the floor pan in these race cars. Who's going to win it, though? Is it going to be Jordan Rickstad-Greeny? Is it going to be Huffman, though, in that number 89 car? Look at Burkhardt with a final challenge. Burkhardt going to win it in the number 40 car with a late challenge, making contact with Miles Crab after the checkered flag. Burkhardt coming back in a comeback of a lifetime to win it. Coming to the checkered flag this time by Montgomery has a gap over Justice and Rice Pudo, but the real question is, will he be able to hold on to that? You can see that gap closing. Rice Pudo gonna try to get the move done. A little bit of contact with himself and Justice heading through the high banks. This is going to be a race to the checkered flag. A photo finish. Justice on that outside line. Rice Pudo cutting to the inside. Montgomery going to be the meat in that sandwich and coming to take the checkered flag. Winning this race is going to be the number 99 car of Joshua Justice.
Wow.
He's made up 11 spots thus far. Is he going to try and make it 12 on Nichols? They're going to be side by side, hang under the bridge, down into the hairpin of turn number 7. Nichols on that inside line. He's got to carry a whole lot of speed into the corner. Josh Soto in that sneaky McLaren. Going to try and find any sort of way to get around him. And you can see a little bit of blocking between these two. Heading through Fangio now. This turn number 9, a very quick corner. But look at Nichols losing out on the time. Look at Soto trying to get a 2-for-1 deal around the outside through into turn number 10 of Cunningham. Looking at that from Soto, gonna wheel it on the inside through Collier Bend of turn number 11, and Joshua Soto pulling off a masterful drive to get one move done, but he's still trying to fight hard with Will Pierre for that second position. You can see him side by side coming out of Tower Bend of turn 13. This is a drag race between these two now. It looks like Soto in that slippery McLaren is going to slip his way past. Soto gave it his everything. He was able to get that move done. Looking at a crash pit involving the 2 Porsches, though. Murphy Nichols in that 5 car tried to go for the move heading into turn number 15, but just a bit too opportunistic and a bad rejoin there. Gonna take out, I believe. Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Ray Esports Club Racing League. This is round number 2 for group number 3, coming to you tonight from Sebring. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Josh Wilkie. Our Floridian streak to kick this season off continues tonight, and if we're being honest, Sebring is a fantastic choice of racetrack. Just kicking things off tonight, we have the Formula Vs, and at Sebring, I have a feeling that we're in for an instant classic. Josh, we're off the back of covering the past Formula V Weekend Warriors season, and throughout those 13 rounds, we saw some great racing just about everywhere. So coming into tonight, Josh, the fast nature of this racetrack, coupled with those pretty long flat-out blasts, is probably going to give us a pretty good race. What do you think?
I have to go ahead and agree with you there, Ron, for sure. This is going to be an interesting one, I think, with these Vs out here today. Very, very big track for such a tiny car, and I think that's going to provide us a lot of battling and a lot of back and forth and stuff out there on the track, with 2 pretty big long sections there to get a draft that we know these things are so good at, and then even some twisty technical stuff as well to kind of mess with people a little bit as well. So I think this is a pretty big track for these cars, and we're going to have a lot of 3 wide, 4 wide, 5 wide. I think we're going to have a pretty good race out here today, Ron.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a good one. This track, ever so historic. Of course, it holds the Sebring 12-hour every single year. It was also the first ever road course to host a round of the Formula One World Championship. The first ever American track was the Indy 500 back in 1950, but F1 history buffs don't really count that because it's like the biggest technicality to end all technicalities. But still, Sebring, an absolutely wonderful racetrack in the world of motorsports. And off the back of the round that we had about a month ago, Josh, with these Group 3 race cars at Homestead, Miami, running at a track where we had a massively long flat lap last throughout a massive chunk of that lap. Kind of a case of deja vu around Sebring, especially here in these Formula V race cars, going to spend a decent chunk of the lap spent flat out. Still going to be a long ride, though, at 3.74 miles and 17 turns in all. The fastest lap time in practice earlier on was set by Nicholas Rice-Puda on the number 22 car, a driver who we're certainly going to be keeping our eyes on for in this qualifying session we're in right now. He set the pace at a 2-minute 36.814. Then he had to go back to Joe Camilleri, who set a 2-minute 42.851. So a little bit of variance in terms of the lap times. That'd be, what, about 6 seconds between the first place car in the practice session earlier on and the last place car in the practice session, but still very long lap times around this racetrack. It's going to feel like forever for some of these racers, especially in this qualifying session.
Yeah, absolutely. Being out there solo on the track in a V, you definitely feel a little bit lost out there, I would think. And, I think this should be a bit of an interesting qualifying here as well, because the track is so big that it's just kind of a little bit difficult maybe to find those lines out there. And there really is time everywhere. There's time in millimeters in this car, as we know. And there's a lot of millimeters out there on Sebring, a lot of them. And it's a pretty big lap, and it's a long lap for this car and everything as well. So I have a feeling we might see a bit of a spread in qualifying today as well. And then, because of that draft we're speaking of on that back straight and even down the front straight, actually into the infamous T1 run there, I think we're probably going to have some pretty good drafting, and it's going to kind of keep people bunched up regardless sort of what happens in qualifying today. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting kind of just to see who can lay out that raw pace and then how that translates to the race later on, Ron.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Who's going to set the pace and who's going to be the Pied Piper of this race that we have coming up? Because that's a big thing when it comes to these Formula V races. We saw it a lot with the Formula V Weekend Warriors this past season, which you can catch here on slow motion broadcasting. But we saw it a lot there, and we're going to see it a lot here. It's the same race car, even though we are now technically into Season 1 of 2025, so I guess iRacing New Year's coming a little bit earlier than actual New Year's. But nevertheless, these Formula V race cars are always such draft-heavy races, so just knowing where to position your car are going to be a big factor in deciding who's going to take the checkered flag. But these drivers fighting for pole at the moment, so lap times getting put on the board. It's Miles Crab at the front, currently at a 2-minute 38.147. Lots of lap times going on the board, noting Josh Justice, who's down in 11th. He was pretty quick in the opening race of the season at Homestead, Miami. I say pretty quick. He won that Formula V race at Homestead not terribly long ago, so looking to see what he can do. Currently slotted in 12th at the moment at 239.540, but still these drivers have 4 laps to try and get the job done in this 15-minute long solo qualifying session. And with the first lap times on the board, looks like the first blood going to Crab.
Yeah, it looks like our longtime weekend warrior here, Miles Crab, up there with the pole at the moment, but not too far behind him here, and I would assume we're going to get some improvements on the folks behind him here as well. But they are tooth and nail behind him as well, 2, 3, and 4 at the moment. Probably only their first lap out there, so I would imagine we're going to get a bit of an improvement here and there. But it's looking pretty darn close between the top 3 and then even into the top 5 and 6 and 7 as we get a Huffman popping in another time there as well. But at the moment, it looks like Miles Crab kind of has the number of this track, which is not going to be an easy one to go out there and find the lap time on at all.
And you just briefly mentioned a driver who I always like to keep tabs on. It's the Huffmans. I say the Huffmans because sometimes it will be Jameson driving. Other times it will be marked as Justin Huffman, Jameson's dad, driving. But we've seen in the past with the old Ray Esports Racing League on Tuesday nights, back when that series was still a thing, broadcast with a different broadcaster that we will not mention by name. But back then, you would occasionally see Justin driving around, and it was actually Jameson behind the wheel using his dad's iRacing account. So who knows, this could be Jameson, this could be Justin. Either way, the Huffmans running in the 223 car right now. The Huffmans actually race some Formula Enterprise cars with the SECA, so nice to see them running out here in the Formula Vs. And now Jameson was incredibly quick last time out at Homestead. He was a factor in deciding the finishes of the Formula V and Spec Racer Ford races that we had just about a month ago. Didn't really materialize for him too much, didn't take the checkered flag in either of those races, but he's been a driver who we've seen do very well in Ray Esports Racing League events in the past, so we'll definitely have to keep tabs on the driver who, as it stands at the moment, is slotted in 6th. Jacob Schilling jumping his way up into 3rd in the number 85 car. That's a pretty good lap time for him. Currently at a 2-minute 38.478. And now, Josh, I will mention something that you kind of hinted at not terribly long ago. Actually, I'll hold that thought as Nicholas Rice-Puto jumps up to the provisional pole at a 2:37.470. That is a blisteringly quick time for the driver of the number 22 car. I said he set the pace in practice earlier on. Looks like he's going to continue that here into the qualifying session. Finds himself on the provisional pole over halfway through the session as well, so that's looking very good for him. But the point that I was going to raise before Nicholas Rice-Puto decided to steal the show out of the blue, you mentioned earlier on talking about how your fate in this race can be decided by a matter of millimeters. I decided to be this kind of person and do the math, aka do the math. I just looked up on Google miles to millimeters. It is 6,018,947 millimeters that make up this 3.74 mile long racetrack. So got a whole lot of millimeters for these drivers to try and work with.
Yeah, definitely. And if you get like 3 of those wrong, somebody's going to be ahead of you, as Resputo just showed us there. He has definitely found some momentum somewhere that nobody else has found quite yet. That can really come down, honestly, to one corner and just a little bit less brake pressure, or just a little bit earlier on the throttle, and boom, you have 2/10 easily around here. And it's such a big track. I have a feeling you can find those and lose them just so very easily that we could see somebody maybe even just pop in a quick one here just before the race starts as well and beat him again, just because it is that big. And I wouldn't be surprised here if once we actually get racing, I think this is going to be quite the race here, and we're going to be 4 or 5 cars wide a bunch.
And one thing that definitely should be noted is the fact that in this qualifying session, you're going to see those lap times, and they're going to be, I mean, in some cases, they're going to be right about the same, if not a little bit quicker than how some of these drivers went in practice earlier on. But most of the time, you're probably going to see them be a little bit slower for the simple sake that in the practice session we had earlier on that we were not able to broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, you got the draft. And that's going to be so big in the 30-minute race we have coming up. Very similar to the Formula V Weekend Warriors Series, where this woman, Michelle Lynn, is usually a fixture. The driver of the number 44 car going to cross the start-finish line now is an improvement from her. Yes, it is, to jump her way up into 9th at 2-minute 38.749. Always odd reading out the lap times with a long combination like this, having to say 2 minutes something rather than 1 minute something. Edgar Sancinelli and Andrew Love just put on some pretty good improvements, jumping their way up the running order. Antonio Reese and Brad Cathcart, some other Weekend Warriors staples, they're jumping their way up into the top 10, currently slotted in 7th and 8th. Mayuro right now jumping up into 2nd. Skip Brock Jr. qualified in 3rd at the moment. Miles Crabb, who was our provisional pole sitter not terribly long ago, actually tied with Andrew Love lap time-wise of both of those two racers, setting 2-minute 38.147s. Pretty close, honestly, even though it's single car qualifying and the conditions may be a little bit different in the race that we have coming up. Won't have to worry about rain, which we'll definitely be discussing at some point during this show. But that's still insane to have those two cars, especially around a racetrack like this with lap times that big, to be identical down to the thousands. That's incredible.
That is genuinely pretty incredible. Yes, it's not something you're going to see every day, but of course randomness means that it will happen, and it may happen again. That being said, still very rare, and I think, you know, the top 6, top 7, 8 drivers here, man, we are going to have a pretty good race up at the front here. The You know, even the slower time there of a 1:38.173 is really, really close to the other guys in front of him there. So I have a feeling that this is going to be a very tight race, maybe even a lot tighter than we usually see them. Just again, because of what we keep mentioning, this track just has so many options and lines everywhere that it's going to allow you to kind of cut shapes around your opponents and stuff and look for those lines and maybe, you know, go wide, go on the inside a little bit. Lots of drafting opportunity, so pretty cool to see people punching, you know, very well here in qualifying with the times and stuff as well on such a big track and so close to each other.
Yeah, that's the thing as well with this racetrack, Josh. And you mentioned how we're going to have a very close race. Gotta say, honestly, my thoughts heading into this were, I wouldn't say vague. It's just, I'm really curious to see how these cars are going to tackle this racetrack. Because when we saw with the Formula V Weekend Warriors, you would have a long, flat-out run to the checkered flag. Let's take VIR, for instance. You'd have a long run to the checkered flag where you'd probably have a fantastic photo finish. Here, on the other hand, you've got a long run heading down the Ullman straightaway. You head through Sunset Bend at turn 17. Then you've got another long run heading down that start-finish straightaway before you get off into turn number 1. And even that run between the exit of Sunset Bend and that start-finish line, that's long enough to have some side-by-side finishes. I think a couple of seasons ago, Josh, we may have joked about the fact that at Daytona, you'd probably see like a 4-wide finish or something ridiculous like that. I certainly won't rule it out with these race cars. I mean, they can go 4-wide size-wise because a Formula V race car is basically a small little gnat in the world of motorsports. But I mean, just in terms of the speed that they're carrying through the corner and the way these race cars generally are in the racing action that they put on week after week, I think we're honestly, it's not out of the realm of possibilities for us to have a ridiculous photo finish like that. Yeah,
I think that's a good point, Ron, and that Sebring sort of promotes that, if you ask me. You kind of come out of this last section that Justin Huffman's on right now. He's just looks like he's stopping his lap here. He must have had an off track or something. But coming down that back straightaway, it gives everybody a chance to kind of bunch up with each other. And then you have that last corner of Sunset, a very difficult corner that sort of funnels down into one. And you see many people going through there too wide or trying to make a pass there, and then that last run out to the line. So I think this track kind of promotes that sort of finish around here, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see one of those today as well, probably right down to the line.
Yeah, it is going to come down to the final few moments of this 30-minute long race that we have coming up for you in just a couple of moments' time. Looks like the qualifying session has been drawn to a conclusion. That's going to be Nicholas Rice-Puto grabbing the pole. The driver with an I rating of nearly 5,000. He is a quick racer. Certainly proved it, setting the fastest practice time, setting the time to grab the pole position. We'll have to see if he goes 3 for 3 and grabs a checkered flag in this race that we have coming up for you right about now. But as you can see, the field lining up, I got that starting grid loaded up for you right about now. And as I said, Nicholas Rice-Puto, Nicholas Rice-Puto would be his name if he has an airborne accident at some point during this race. He's going to be starting from the pole in the number 22 car, the Floridian. Going to be joined by another Floridian, that being Gianni Mayuro in the number 20 car. Those two cars separated by 9/10 of a second in that qualifying session. Skip Brock Jr. going to be starting in third. Joining him on that second row is going to be Miles Crabb. Andrew Love going to be starting in fifth. Justin Huffman in P6. Edgar Sancinelli, who we just saw on the racing line one day ago, he's going to be starting in seventh. Antonio Reese, who's usually a Weekend Warrior staple. I've seen him run occasionally here with the Wednesday night Ray Esports Club Racing League. God knows what hour of the morning it is for Antonio Reese right now, but credit where credit's due to the man. He's going to be starting this race in eighth. Brad Cathcart continuing his Ray Esports breakfast tradition thus far this season. He's going to be joining us. The Aussie is from ninth. Chris Montgomery going to round out your top 10.
Yeah, and then in 11th we have Jacob Schilling. 12th, Seth Spoolman. In 13th, we have Donnie Isley. 14th, Chuck Labano, who did great last weekend. See if he can't push it in this V as well this week. In 15th, we have Michelle Lynn. Joshua Justice in 16th. In 17th, Aaron Bray, I believe. In 18th, we have Andy Smith. 19th, Jason Grider. 20th, Matt Thompson. 21st, Carlos Lopez Jr. 22nd, Wayne Buttermore. 23rd, John Casey. And in 24th place, we have Dan Trzynski. I believe we have a few more runners here, Ron, if you want to take them.
Yes, I certainly will. Got a massive field of race cars, and following Dan Szynski in 24th, we have Tim Preble and the number 31 car. Tom Wentz going to be joining him on that 13th row. Doing a quick math in my head. Joe Camilleri, the Canadian, going to be starting this race in 27th. Next to Steven Tiska in the number 11 car. Mike Key going to be starting in 29th. Ryan Campbell in 30th. Then we have Russ Lundberg starting this race in 31st. And Joaquin Effinger going to round out your 32 car grid that we have for this race. A field which is full of a lot of real life racers. That's the thing when it comes to the just world of Ray Esports, whether it be with the Weekend Warriors or whether it be with the Wednesday Night Club Racing League. Got a lot of the drivers that you see out there on the racetrack who are real life SCCA or otherwise racers. Got the likes of Josh Justice, Russ Lundberg, got some others like Donnie Isley who are following right now. I believe Donnie and I believe it was his son Trip. They used to be a part. Actually, I believe I may be getting it wrong there.
I remember what you're saying, though. Yeah, I forget his name as well, Ron, but they were a father-son team that was out here not long ago on one of our other broadcasts. I do remember that.
I remember they were a fixture of the Tuesday night Ray Esports Racing League. They usually ran in the Formula Vs. They run Formula Vs in real life. So the dynamic duo of the Isleys seeming to make their appearance here with the Wednesday Night League, as Donnie is going to be starting this race in the 030 car. A little bit in the mid-pack, which may not be the best position to be at the very beginning of this race. Turn 1, though, I am... Personally, Josh, I am bracing myself for the view of just seeing a massive pack of Formula V race cars head their way through turn number 1. God knows how many cars wide.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that one, Ron. I think this whole first lap is going to be one of those laps where you just have to try to keep it together. You got to really respect the people around you. You got to make sure you make good decisions and get those first couple laps done. There is a lot of cars out there. And like we were saying on the run-up, it's just going to be, I think it's going to be really inviting to just fill up all the gaps that open in front of you on this big track. And you're going to want to try to get beside the person, and you're going to want to try to get in really close. Every corner is going to kind of feel a little bit like maybe there's an opportunity here, and that can really cause a lot of problems. So I think it's going to be a lot about kind of trying to keep your head, make sure you're making good decisions out there, get through those first 3 or 4 or 5 laps. Everything spreads out, find your pack of drivers you can drive with, and then do the work that you can to try to get away from the rest of the pack. And I think that's going to be the key to the race today. But as we know, things kind of fly off the handle immediately. As soon as that pace car leaves and the green flag goes, people are going to want to gun it. And I don't think you're right, Ron. That first corner or even first section of corners is going to be a little bit interesting today.
Usually at the start of a race at Sebring, turn 1 is probably the most treacherous spot. Gotta say though, Josh, at the very beginning of this race, I don't have a very good feeling about the hairpin of turn 7, because that's usually the section where some racers are feeling maybe a little bit more bold and overly opportunistic at times. They'll go for some moves that are certainly odd ones to be sure, but these racers still going to be fighting like hell to try and get as many moves done as they can all throughout this race. Look at the field a little bit disorganized, heading their way off through Sunset Bend. The final corner for these drivers to negotiate before we grab the green in a couple of moments' time. See some marbles on the outskirts of Sunset Bend. May have to talk about that come time for the end of this 30-minute race that we have coming up right about now. That pace car has made the turn off onto pit lane. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way, and you can see them going through the gears, putting the smoke up in the air, and let's see who's going to be leading them heading off through turn number 1. They're already 3 wide. Is it going to be our pole man of Rice Pudo, or is it going to be someone else leading them coming out of turn number 1? Let's see who's it going to be. I think it's a very good start for Mayuro. I think he's been shuffled back. Is Rice Pudo. He's now down to 3rd. He's been able to shuffle him back. Miles Crabgang off to a pretty good start, making up 2 spots, running in P2 right behind Gianni Mayuro. Some side-by-side racing a little bit farther in the back. Josh Justice making up 2 spots already. He wants to grab back-to-back wins in these Formula V race cars. A real real-life Spec racer, Ford racer, looking to press in the V's, but he can see 3 wide action a little bit farther in the back, going down under the bridge through turn number 6 right now. About to head our way into the hairpin in a couple of moments' time, and we may see some drivers risk it for the biscuit or risk it for the Triscuit if you're feeling the low-calorie option. These racers, though, gotta be putting on some really hard-fought fights and hoping to God that they can get through that corner cleanly, which it looks like most of the field has done.
Yep, I'm not even going to say it, Ron. We're looking real good here. Race is on. Not going to jinx it. Looks awesome. It looks like we got Gianni Morero definitely made the move there into T1, and he's got the lead right now, as it looks like actually Miles Crab kind of slipping to the back a little bit here in the early stages of the race. But wow, super clean so far. I guess I said it. I'm going to go with it. We're super clean. Very impressed with everybody here. That was amazing first lap so far. Let's keep it up.
It looks like most of the field running slick and running smooth. They're trying to get off to the best start they can. You cannot win this race on lap 1, but you sure can lose it. But these racers still going to be racers. They're still going to go for some moves. Looking now at some side-by-side racing. Skip Rock Jr. maybe going to try and go for the 2-for-1 deal. Heading off into turn 14. Got the move done on Rice Puto. So close to making contact with Mayuro, though. Heading through the section. Now Rice Puto looking to fight back on the inside. Heading through Le Mans at turn 16. Now onto that back straightaway. Mayuro having a major off-track excursion coming out of the corner. Saw that car sideways, slideways, mowing through the grass. Lots of racers running off the track, and that's a spin farther in the back. Looks like everyone avoids wall contact, but 2 spun around coming out of the corner, as we may have some 3 wide action, 4 wide action nearly. Heading down into Sunset Bend. Look at Rice Puto, Mayuro, and Skip Rock Jr. Skip Rock now getting shuffled back. Crab trying to get a move done to slip his way up into the podium spots. This is a chaos that we're expecting. The hecticness at the front of the field. Rice Puto briefly retook the lead, but now taking the lead from him is going to be Gianni Mayuro, who started this race up in the front. He's going to be completing this first lap in the lead, and we got 5 cars covered by practically nothing. Look at Andrew Love getting involved in that fight as well. Love, I remember a couple of weeks ago, probably a month and a half ago at this point, if my memory serves me correctly, in the Formula V Weekend Warriors Series at Indianapolis, Andrew Love was getting dicey. He's a Spec 2 champion for Season 4 of 2024 with the Formula V Weekend Warriors, so have it be known that the driver of the 945 car is quick in these race cars. He may be a sleeper pick come time for the end of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew's really been impressing me this season in different machinery and stuff as well. You know, I've raced him in S2 and the other categories there, and I don't think I could beat him in one of these things, man. He's flying, and he's kind of been, you know, he's had the pace a few times now as we're going. It looks like 4 wide in the background here with Antonio Reese and Schilling, and everybody sorts it out. Beautiful. So as you were saying, Ron, that's probably one of the better passing opportunities into that hairpin. Real difficult to get the car woed up just right, especially when you're 4 wide trying to figure out where you fit in there. And man, they did it super good there. Great action we're seeing out here today.
Holy cow, look at this pack that we're following right now. Chuck Labano in the midst of that, the Frito Sport racer in the number 2 car. Looking at this, maybe trying to get a move done around the outside of Josh Justice. Looking to try and follow Frito Sport's own Edgar Sancinelli, so looking to follow his team owner through all of that. That would be some bold stuff from Labano. Looks like he remains in 14th for the time being. There is Edgar Sancinelli in the 57 car, so let's see if he's going to get some moves done, maybe on the likes of Schilling and Cathcart right in front of him. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But looking at this pack, this is insane. We've got Mayuro still leading this race. Rice Puto going side by side at the moment with Skip Rock Jr. heading off through turn number 15. Mega close to contact. Looks like they're going to be lying astern for the time being. Crab maybe got to fight back and get a move done on Skip Rock Jr. to slip his way up into 3rd. But coming out onto the Ullman straightaway, it's Mayuro, Rice Puto, Brock, Crab, Love, Huffman, and Donnie Isley, covered by 1.2 seconds. It's a hornet's nest of race cars at the north end of this field, but they're still racing as hard as they can. Rice Puto looking to try and retake the lead, heading off into Sunset Bend. Look at Skip Rock Jr. trying to get the move done, and a big crash. Miles Crab tumbling. Love going sideways, heading through Sunset Bend, and that catches out Miles Crab, who ballparks it, heading through Sunset Bend. Some 3 wide action at the front of the field. Skip Rock Jr., Mayuro, and Rice Puto covered by barely any air to complete that 2nd lap. Now it's Brock and Mayuro side by side heading all through the corner. Looks like Skip Rock Jr. gonna get shuffled back into 2nd. Rice Puto in 3rd. Donnie Isley completes this pack that just got broken up mega as a result of a mega collision heading through turn number 17. That was huge.
Holy cow. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone get catapulted quite so hard off the track before there, on. We're definitely going to have to go have a look at that. That happened really fast and really abruptly, and he just got flung. Literally ballparked him off the track. I think he actually left the track so hard and so aggressively that iRacing just zapped him into the pit lane automatically, and it happened in under a second. So unfortunately, right at the front with some of our faster guys out there, and this was going to be a kind of a 5 or 6 man fight, which it probably still will end up being, but we've lost 2 from that fight at the beginning there, and that's unfortunate, but that's racing.
I gotta say, though, credit where credit's due to Miles Crabb for ballparking it in the way that he did. We got a big crash here involving Brad Cathcart. You can see him sideways. I believe Jacob Schilling is the other car involved in that as well. There's Schilling rejoining the racetrack in the number 85 car. I think Wendt may have been someone else involved in that. Antonio Reese may have just had an off-track excursion. Saw him drop down the running order and possibly tow as we see some side-by-side racing here involving Rice Pudo and Skip Brock Jr. We've had such a chaotic start that I can't even speak the words out of my mouth the right way. Looking still side by side, about to head their way off through Bishop of turn number 14. Usually a side-by-side fight heading through this section is going to end in disaster. Nearly did for Skip Brock Jr. You can see that car was mega upset heading through, hitting that curb on the inside. Gotta say as well, Josh, the curbs around Sebring, it's one of the first tracks on the iRacing platform that had these 3D curbs put into it. And I remember with a different series that we did with a different broadcaster, one of the main championship contenders in that series hit one of those 3-wide curbs and just got yoinked up like a puppet on a string. It was a very odd moment, so the 3D curbs can occasionally come back to bite these drivers on the hind end, but Donnie Isley looking to strike while the iron's hot. He's trying to get a move done on Rice Pudo and Brock to slip his way up into the lead. Looks like he got done on Brock. However, the challenge with Rice Pudo was a little bit harder. Rice Pudo, though, going to get shuffled out, getting a little bit of a love tap there from Skip Brock Jr. A little bit of bump drafting action going on here with the Formula Vs thus far in this race. Having hit the 10-minute mark as well, Josh, and we've seen a whole lot of drama thus far. Looks like it's going to continue right behind them, as you can see Hoffman, Montgomery, and Justice 3 wide heading their way through turn number 1. Justice going to back out of it. He wants no parts of 3-wide madness at any section of this racetrack, even a straightaway for that matter. But Huffman and Montgomery, they're still going to be side-by-side fighting hard through turn number 3. Looks like they single file out. I gotta wonder as well, Josh. I say I gotta wonder. It's happened. Right as I was going to say this, I was thinking that maybe the pack of Huffman, Montgomery, Justice, and Chuck Labano at the tail end of it, they were going to reel in the leaders. They have now reeled in the leaders. That's only 0.7 of a second between Donnie Isley in third and Justin Huffman in fourth. So this fight, as much as it was intense between Rice Pudo, Brock, and Isley heading through Sunset Bend not terribly long ago, it's now a 7-car fight. Back to how it was not terribly long ago before the field blew apart.
Yeah, absolutely. They caught up for sure, and that's what's going to happen when you squabble around at the front there. And you brought up a good point with the curbs and everything here as well, Ron. These curbs can be kind of inviting, but man, can they ever bite. And I do remember that day that it was basically like a landmine. I think it was an F4 car, and went into the final section there before the back straight and just blew up off one of the curbs. And we've seen it happen, multiple times, and it could happen again today. So you really want to be careful, especially with that end of the lap and the curbs there. They can really, really upset the car a lot. But let's see if we can't catch up to maybe what happened here. You know what? We're going to stick with this just for a moment because it's looking a little bit frenetic here again. And then we'll get to some replays and see if we can't find out what happened in that early crash and then the one following it as well, how we got here.
Yeah, I feel like we'll have to have that replay on deck for like 1,000 years before this pack up towards the north end of the field begin to settle down. Gotta say, though, in terms of the fact that the pack had turned into a 7-car fight, it's kind of like that in an odd way. That gap keeps fluctuating between Donnie Isley and Justin Huffman. It's fluctuating between right now about 0.2 of a second hang down the Ullman straightaway right about now. Then occasionally through the corners it jumps up to closer to probably a couple of tenths. But looking at this is absolute insanity. That's 5 cars covered by nothing heading down the Ullman straightaway through Sunset Bend right now, hoping that none of these race cars have a sideways snap and they go the way of that pack that we saw earlier on. Actually, I think right as I said that, Montgomery had a sideways snap coming out of the corner. I think I saw some smoke getting kicked up. That or some dust offline, but 3 wide racing here with Puto, Brock, and Montgomery. Looking at that, just absolutely ridiculous. It's such an optical illusion as well. You may think that some of these racers are going 4 wide, which they probably are doing, knowing the way that these racers have been driving thus far. Mayuro just set the fast lap of the race. He was leading not terribly long ago. He's now been shuffled back down to 7th. Shows you how quickly things can change in these Formula V races. Think that was someone just getting shuffled out of the line a little bit there. May have been Labano, but as I said that, he actually jumps his way up into 5th, so well done to Chuck. As Mayuro and Huffman begin to go side by side, we'll take a look at this replay to see the drama of Andrew Love, the commentator's jinx from all of the Maunzes. My dad saying in the YouTube chat that there's some nice clean racing. Right as I was mentioning that Love was a sleeper pick, and then that major calamity happens heading through Sunset Bend. Crab ball parking Love going sideways. An unfortunate incident taking out some very good race cars in the process.
Yeah, that was pretty unfortunate. Really just kind of a loss of grip by the looks of it, and car behind him just had nowhere to go there and got seriously ballparked out of the track. So unfortunate. Yeah, I would have to say that Andrew Love was probably my sleeper pick as well there, and it's a bummer not to see him in the race anymore, but that's the way the cookie crumbles every once in a while, and he'll have to try to regroup and either see if he can't bring it up from the back. Looks like maybe he's called it for the day here, but there is another race after this, and we do have more rounds, so I'm sure we'll have him back, and it's just kind of an unfortunate thing, but like we were saying in the beginning, there's so much room out there and so many millimeters to play with that, well, there's just two cars trying to use the same millimeter at the same time there, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah, so many millimeters around this racetrack, but there's only so few that these race cars actually want to be around, and occasionally it can result in major drama like this. Looking at that, this fight is going to continue to boggle my mind. Mayuro and Brock side by side heading off through Le Mans Bend. Looking at that from Skip Brock Jr. holding his own around the outside in the 68 car. Well done from him. That's usually a move that you think, oh yeah, you're going to get shuffled out. Maybe even get pushed into the grass. No, Skip Brock Jr., Mayuro playing fair, playing hard, giving us a fantastic fight for the final 2 positions inside the top 5. Oh, and look at that! Mayuro nearly running into the back of Donnie Isley heading off through Sunset Bend. That could have been an absolute airplane collision heading through Sunset Bend. Well done for Mayuro to just saw at the wheel and avoid any sort of major drama, because that could have ended in a major calamity. Speaking of calamities, though, this is absolutely insane. I could best describe it as like looking at the parking lot of a shopping mall on Black Friday. It is pure madness at the front of this field. And hey, Josh, you know the best part about this is we haven't even hit the halfway mark and we still got scenes like this.
Yeah, this is pretty unbelievable, honestly. Some great shots there, 2 of them working the wheel, trying to stay out of trouble there through Sunset. What an amazing corner. That was totally awesome. I'm going to see if I can't pull up a little replay maybe from the outside so we can see just how close that was, as we can kind of put it in our minds together with how he was working on the wheel there and how hard it is sometimes to just stay off the driver beside you. Just simply stay off the guy beside you who's not trying to kill you. He's just trying to stay off you as well. And man, oh man, it can cause some pretty awesome moments there, and we're getting a bunch of them here. We're only 14 minutes in, not even quite halfway like you're saying there, Ron, and we've already had a pretty much full race of activity here, and the pack just continues to grow.
I will say, Josh, as much as these race car drivers are very clean, very respectful, and they're not trying to kill each other, I think they don't fear death either, considering the close quarters racing we've had thus far. They haven't really backed off either. We're going to take a look at this. If Mayuro didn't back off in this, it could have been another ballpark of a Formula V race car. You can see how sideways he was. There was a lot of things going on. I think Isley in the 030 car was kind of backing out of it a little bit, heading off into Sunset Bend. He was thinking a little bit careful, not getting involved in the fight in front of him. Meanwhile, Mayuro may have a little bit of bad locking heading off through the braking zone into Sunset Bend, and as a result of that was 2 race cars who I think, 2 race cars and 2 race car drivers who should be counting their lucky stars the fact they still have a race car with 4 wheels on their wagon. Speaking of, though, I think on the subject of a wagon, there may be a small little part of it that's breaking away. Looking at this, it's Joshua Justice, who won the opening race of the season at Homestead, Andy Smith in the number 5 car, who I believe is a newcomer, unless I'm very much mistaken, and Edgar Sancinelli, who's very much so not a newcomer in the Ray Esports and Weekend Warriors world. Those three kind of losing touch with the cars in front, so we may need to keep tabs on that storyline throughout the rest of this race, which is now over the halfway
Oh, we lost
mark.
Isley.
Oh, and that's a big spin. That's Donnie Isley going around, heading through Sunset Bend. Looks like no harm, no foul with anyone else outside of Isley. He's going to go sideways, lose out on a whole bunch of time, dropping down to 10th. Got to load up that replay now to see what happened to the driver of the 030 car.
Yeah, looks like maybe he just kind of got a little bit stuck up here. Let's see. Yeah, unfortunately. Looks like he had some good momentum there that unfortunately he was just not able to use, and he had to kind of get on the clappers in an awkward spot. And yep, the rear end found the front end, and that's how easy it happens. Sometimes, you know, he had a run there, and it looks like the run just kind of got plugged on him, and he sort of tripped over the brake pedal there. And man, that happens to the best of us.
You can see now Isley has rejoined the race. He's running 11th right now in the midst of another Hornet's Nest with himself, Thompson, Campbell, and Spolman. So 4-car fight, not too much of a headache that probably was at the north end of the field, but I think he'll probably be giving himself a leg ache from kicking himself after that spin. But again, in these Formula V race cars, that is an easy mistake to make. We mentioned so often when it comes to these Formula V races, either with the Ray Esports Club Racing League or with the Formula V Weekend Warriors, it's so important to carry the momentum in these Formula V race cars. They're not too powerful, so we see Thompson sideways, slideways, heading off to the hairpin of turn number 7. I think he should be very lucky about the fact that that race car kind of stayed sort of with him in an odd way. I think the race car was kind of running its own game there, for lack of a better term. I think he hit the marbles on the outside there. You can see the outside line heading through a lot of these corners, Josh. Incredibly dirty. I think that may have been what bit Thompson out.
Yeah, it's something we actually didn't mention on the run-up to the show, is that iRacing, this update, has added a debris update, meaning that when you go off track like that, you're going to be dragging a lot more actual usable debris back onto the track. It also means that the tire pickup on the side of the track is going to be much more of an issue now. And I can tell you, you know, just last night I did a little bit of racing around. I actually took the SRF out for a quick rip, and I touched the dirt and came back on the track, and I spun really hard into the next corner. And I think that's probably because I had some dirt on my tire. So it's something we're going to have to think about now in iRacing, is when you see somebody go off in front of you and spread a bunch of grass or dirt all over the track, this could very well cause an issue for you now, something that you have to think about and start making decisions on as well. So just another way for us to lose a little bit of iRating, until we figure it out as we go too wide into into the final corner again. And I think we're probably going to see this like probably every lap, wouldn't you say, Ron?
Yeah, I think we're just going to see this every single lap, maybe even every single corner between now and the checkered flag. As much as the racing has been incredibly intense thus far, we're getting to the point now where these racers are going to be eyeing up the checkered flag and maybe getting even more aggressive. Looking at Nicholas Rice-Puto in the 22 car, he has been running very strong all throughout this race. Grabbed the pole, as I said, set the fastest time in practice as well. So I'm curious whether he's going to pull off the triple here tonight. He's been battling up towards the front all throughout this race. Still battling up towards the front now, running in third, sideways, slideways, heading through turn number 3, trying to get moved done on Montgomery. But with that side-by-side racing, Gianni Maioro in the number 20 car, he's slowly starting to pull away. Skip Rock Jr. nearly made it 3 wide with himself. Rice-Puto and Montgomery coming out of the corner may still make it 3 wide before they head off into the hairpin in a couple of moments' time. But this pack slowly but surely breaking away from the rest of the cars around them. Labano running in 5th, last car in this train, as Montgomery and Rice-Puto still side by side, very close to making contact. I don't have a good feeling about this at all, Josh. That was very, very close, and it looks like they're nearly bump drafting coming out of the corner through Fangio.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit contentious there. We are entering that stage of the race here where you start thinking, you start seeing the finish line. You start thinking, hey, I want to be in front of this guy now. And that's kind of, I think, what we're seeing right here. We know Chris Montgomery, again, another staple of the Weekend Warrior series here. Very clean driver. Actually had a bit of an incident with him last week. I should apologize for when I kind of rubbed the rear end there and I spun him out. And it looks like today he's making really good decisions out there. He's trying to stay off the other drivers as much as he can. He's really carrying some pace, and he's definitely got a shot at the win here. That being said, if they keep squabbling too hard behind here, like we know, Ron, that guy in front, Muro, sorry, will take off. He will just start to kind of peel off into the distance there. You need that draft. You need to be able to stick with the guy in the front. If he puts more than about a second on you, it's going to start to get hard to catch him without a buddy working with you. And it doesn't really look like these guys are working together very well at the moment.
I think they're working together about as well as oil and water. That's the best way I can describe it. They're not working together at all. I mean, they're working well with each other, if that makes sense, because I mean, hey, they're still in this race. The top 5 still covered by barely any air. There hasn't been a major disaster involving any of these racers yet. I certainly won't rule it out how hard they're driving. Anything can happen between now and the checkered flag. What is happening now, coming to the end of the 8th lap, is Skip Rock Jr. going 3 wide with himself, Rice Puto, and Montgomery. But Rice Puto having a mega run coming out of the corner. Skip Rock Jr. now getting shuffled back down to 4th as we got some 3 wide action here for the lead of the race. Look at Montgomery trying to get that move done on the inside, heading through turn number 1. Didn't really think about him getting a move like that done on Mayoro and Rice Puto. Looking at Skip Rock Jr. now getting a run through turn number 3 right now. Looks like he's going to try and get a move done on Labano to slip his way up into 4th. Labano still holding his own, still side by side, heading through turn number 5 right now. Junior on the outside, and that right there was Labano backing out of it after Skip Rock Jr. used all of the room available, as that's a spin for Edgar Sanchinelli in the 57 car. I think that was coming out of turn number 3. Got to take a quick look at a replay of this here, Josh, to see whether this was an incident all by himself or whether he had a little bit of assistance.
Yeah, it looks unfortunately just like a bit of an overspeed. I'd like to say almost actually that looked perhaps like he was sort of forced into it a little bit. Not forced physically, but forced just kind of mentally into it from the car behind him. Maybe he's looking in the rearview mirror a little bit, but unfortunately just a little bit too much speed into that one, and the front end caught up, or sorry, the rear end caught up with the front. And a little bit surprising, honestly. I was actually going to put, I think he was in about 10th or 11th in that big line of cars there earlier, and when you're in a big line of cars drafting like that, you can make up so many positions, but unfortunately the gap has sort of grown for Edgar here, and it looks like he's going to have to be content with where he is on track today.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think that's a very good theory that he had, Josh, in reference to that spin we just saw from Edgar Sanchinelli not terribly long ago. Focusing on his mirrors, heading into the corner, carrying a lot of speed all through turn number 3. That's the thing with these Formula V race cars. There's a very fine line between carrying a lot of speed through the corner that helps you go fast, or carrying a little bit too much speed and having it end in an absolute disaster. Side-by-side racing continuing with Mayoro and Montgomery. Skip Rock Jr. now involved in this fight. Chuck Labano dropping back, so I think there may have been a moment involving the Canadian behind the wheel, the number 2 car. He still made up 9 spots from where he started in this race. A hard charger currently being Ryan Campbell, running down at 11th, up 19 positions, folks. That is a fantastic start for the driver of the number 32 car. Not sure how in the world he was able to do that. Some incidents to be sure helping him out, but still 19 positions gained. That is a fantastic start for the driver running in 11th as it stands at the moment. One last point to raise, though, in reference to that Sanchinelli moment, hang off through turn number 3. I remember back in the day, a couple of years ago when I was still in high school, having a driver's ed program that I had to be a part of, and them talking about safe driving techniques. I learned this very good lesson, and I think it could be applied to iRacers as well. Rubbernecking in real life can get you into a crash like Chris Montgomery just got into right now. He made contact with Skip Rock Jr. heading off through turn number 1. Be careful here on the rejoin. Look at that, Smith in the number 5. He's going to need a change of underwear after that. That was horrifying for the driver of the 5 car. Holy cow, splitting the middle. That's like a choose cone at a NASCAR race. Chris Montgomery playing that role in the 313 Formula V car, going sideways, slideways through turn number 1. Tried to go for the dive on Skip Rock Jr. It's not going to work out. Instead, he gets shuffled down to 8th. Got to take a look at a replay of this moment here, Josh, to see a major source of drama we saw a couple of moments ago, right as I was going to cut to another odd quote to come out of my mouth.
Yeah, it looks like, unfortunately he's on the inside. It looks like just didn't really see him on the inside there and tried to cut down for that apex and just narrowly missed. Disaster right there as well. So really good avoidance and awareness from the drivers behind him there as well. And just unfortunate for Chris Montgomery. Had so much pace today. Looked like he very well could have took a win today, and just a little bump, and that's unfortunately all over.
So before an asteroid comes down from the heavens and smacks into turn number 13 of Tower Bend, that coincidentally the top 3 are running through right now. I did not mean that. I did not mean to plan that in any way, shape, or form. But before any other major drama happens in this race, I will get this quote out before it just disappears from my head. I remember back in my high school days being part of a driver's ed course and talking about the dangers of driving on the road. And I learned this lesson that could be probably applied to iRacers as well. Of course, it's talking about the Sancinelli incident that feels like it happened 15 years ago, considering the driver we just saw a couple of moments ago. Rubbernecking in real life can get you into an accident. Rubbernecking in iRacing can get you into a crash as well. That's part of the reason why my neck is about as stiff as volcanic rock. Side by side now racing going on with Pudo and Mayoro. That was a very bizarre quote. I apologize for that. But Skip Rock Jr. getting a fantastic view of the side by side fight between those two, heading their way through Sunset Bend for one of the last times in this race. Pudo running a little bit wide. I think he's just allowing, at this point in time, those front 2 in front of him to start to battle. Pudo at this point, he knows that he's got a very fast race car. The driver of the number 22 car set the fastest time in practice, grabbed the pole for this race, and in the race as well, he's been pretty quick in terms of his best lap of the race. Currently stands at a tick under a 2-minute 38. There you can see it right now, a 2-minute 37.981. So that's very good for Nicholas Pudo. Not as quick as the Mayoro, which is certainly quicker than Skip Rock Jr. at a 2:39.2. That's a little bit surprising, the fact he's still up at the front with that best lap of the race. Labano, I gotta wonder if that moment that took him out of that battle, which I think we still maybe need to try and figure out. I'm curious. He may have been a sleeper pick come time for the end of this race. But I think Pudo at this stage maybe exercising a little bit of caution and applying a little bit of patience to try and set yourself up very good for the end of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely in your mind now, trying to set up for the end for sure here. And it looks like up in the front, it looks like kind of Mirano. Oh, you know, too soon. He's right on his butt again. So we definitely have the top 3 here. Anybody's game at all. And, you know, we know from the drafting here and stuff, and especially from these races and kind of the attrition that we see, that it's all still on the table at this point. When you get pack driving like this and big giant track and you can go 2, 3, 4 wide into Sunset, you're almost guaranteeing some sort of an incident here probably right before the race. So, you know, you want to keep that on your mind and try to be able to monopolize on whatever it is that happens in front of you and not get caught up in it. I mentioned that, and I'd actually like to kind of catch up with a couple things here. It's looking like maybe Michelle Lynn had a bit of an incident that we missed earlier, maybe from some over-aggressive driving here, and I'd just like to have it take a little look and see kind of what happened around her and how this happened. And then maybe we can look into Sancinelli as well, and how he lost it. Or actually, I believe it was the other driver you mentioned there, Ron. Oh, unfortunate. Oh, and then just not some very good avoidance there either. So, yeah, that was a bit of a mess right there, definitely. Yeah, so unfortunately, we have Michelle out of the race again. Another falling anvil. We'll see if we can't catch up with a couple other people here who actually kind of missed out on some racing today as well.
Yeah, this race has seen a little bit higher attrition than we saw at Homestead, certainly with a lot more corners and some plenty of overtaking opportunities. Could be part of the reason why that is the case, but that was tough for Michelle seeing that incident. The double or triple whammy heading off through turn number 7. That is a heartbreaker, especially at the very beginning of the race. Michelle, very nice woman, a Philadelphia native as well. I feel like I always have to mention that when I talk about Michelle. Fellow Philadelphians, I need to always point that out, but pretty quick race car driver as well. She's won 2 Spec 2 championships in the Formula V Weekend Warriors Series. Ran some Formula V and some Formula Ford machinery in real life in the past as well. A very fast driver in this sim, but sadly a little bit of bad luck and some over-aggression heading off through turn number 7. I'll tell you what, I have some experience being in as that's actually another moment for Chris Montgomery with a little bit of nose cone damage as well. I think he and Donnie Isley may have just gone into it. Isley, who was seen right in front of Chris Montgomery before that incident, he's had to tow back to pit lane, so it was very much a collision between these two. Let's see it from Montgomery. You can see Isley crowding him on the inside line. Montgomery taking a one-way trip into that inside concrete barrier. Those cars coming up barreling at what felt like a million miles an hour. That's Skip Rock Jr. spinning off the track. That's a major source of drama at the front pack of this field. It was Jr. leading them, heading off into turn number 7. Let's take a look at riding on board with the driver of the number 68 car. Was it a little bit of contact, or was it just a spin all by his own doing? There you can see the 20. Oh, it was a curb whack. He hit the curb on the inside that upset his car, and he takes a one-way trip into the grass on the inside line. That's such a heartbreaker for Skip Rock Jr. That may end up diffusing this fight between Mayoro and Nicholas Rice-Puto, the two racers that started this race on the front row. They're still running in P1 and P2, albeit the other way around. Mayoro got off to a dream start. The same could be said about Nicholas Rice-Puto. Dropped back a little bit. It's been a seesaw game for a lot of these racers who have found themselves involved in that front pack fight. They've lost some time, lost some spots, gained some time, gained some spots. But at this point in time, it's all coming down to this. Mayoro and Rice-Puto running in P1 and P2 respectively. Let's see if they have a swap-a-roo between now and the checkered flag coming up in just one corner's time. They are on the white flag, and it's less than a half a second separating the two of them. You can see the weaving from Mayoro trying to break that draft as best as he can without losing out on the momentum. But Rice-Puto, he has the run, he has the draft, closing up that gap now. It's under 0.2 of a second. I don't think he wants to go for the move though, but he's wheeling it. Look at Mayoro mega sideways, heading through Sunset Bend. Rice-Puto got to try and focus on a good exit, enjoying the draft from the back of Mayoro's car. Will it be enough? Coming to the checkered flag, Mayoro going to take the checkered flag. 0.045 of a second between Mayoro and Rice-Puto. Holy cow, gentlemen. That was a fantastically executed last lap battle, and well done to Mayoro. I thought it was going to be Rice-Puto coming out of that final corner. By Mayoro, he just had barely enough speed to hold on to the lead. Well done.
Absolutely, what a great finish. Just a quick look back here at what happened to Joshua Justice and Huffman here, also into the last corner just behind what we saw there. It looks like they've made a bit of contact on the outside into the barrier, and that'll end that race. So again, you know, some stuff that we foreshadowed there about the final corner and the curbs coming into play right at the end of the race they're on to rear their head.
Holy cow, that finish was absolutely incredible. Still trying to catch my breath after all of that, but holy, I mean, the Formula Vs, I don't know what it is. I mean, driving the Formula Vs, I mean, bearing in mind, I am not a very good sim racer by any means. Josh, when you raised a point earlier talking about the new reworked stuff with debris going onto the tracks on iRacing, I was going to mention that I'm a better racer on iRacing than you, for the simple sake that I can spin out on a totally clean and ready to be driven on racetrack. Meanwhile, you have a little bit of grip difficulties on a dirty racetrack. I just spin in all sorts of different manners whenever I'm in the sim. But maybe that's my perspective talking as a not very good sim racer. Whenever I drive the Formula Vs, I am, for lack of a better term, I am crap in the Formula V. There's a very good reason why I'm behind a microphone instead of behind the wheel. But I don't know what it is. They just put on some fantastic racing, race after race. That was the sort of finish, though, that I was expecting, Josh. And it was Mayoro who I think may have... Oh boy, I'm trying to figure out as to whether or not he picked up any sort of damage as a result of that moment that we saw with Skip Rock Jr. coming out of that final corner. Saw the back of Skip Rock Jr.'s race car kind of... It kind of like tweaked up into the air. I'm not sure what that sad effect was. I apologize for that. But I could see it went up in the air a little bit, did Skip Rock Jr.'s car, so would not be shocked if Mayoro made a little bit of contact, marginal contact to be sure, and in a Formula V race car where basically the most aerodynamic thing is probably a driver's gloves, it's not going to affect you too much, but still, with that, it must have rattled his cage a little bit coming into that last lap thinking, okay, I've got two more competitors, and then one of them drops away. But the one driver who doesn't is the pole man of Rice-Puto, who I gotta say, well done to him for putting on that fight, because, I mean, he sent it heading off into Sunset Bend. I think that small little checkup he had to do coming out of the corner may have been what won it for Mayoro, because Rice-Puto probably sacrificed his run a little bit coming out of that, but still a fantastic finish to bring this race to a close. The Formula V is putting on a fantastic battle to kick tonight's evening off. Tonight's evening? I don't think that's the right term. Tonight's racing off. There we go. This evening's racing But anyways, I think, Josh, we have a small little bit of turnover time, and it looks like there's no drivers looking to have a chat with us. So I think we'll briefly run through the results and get ready for the Spec Racer Forwards, which are probably going to put on a fantastic race as well. There it is, Gianni Maioro in the number 20 car, taking the checkered flag. Race Puto finishes in second. Labano, the Canadian, go round out your podium in third. Then we have Skip Rock Jr. finishing in a somewhat heartbreaking fourth. Andy Smith in the number 5 car, putting on a very valiant drive. He rounds out your top 5. Looking right behind him, we have Justin Huffman finishing in 6th. Josh Justice, who won the first race of the season at Homestead, he finishes this race at Sebring today in 7th. Then we have Edgar Sancinelli finishing right behind in 8th, Matt Thompson in 9th. And rounding out your top 10 is going to be Ryan Campbell, who made up 20 spots between the start and the finish. So well done to him rounding out the top 10.
My mic was muted. Let's try that again. Seth Spoolman in 11th, Jason Grider in 12th, Dan Trzynski in 13th, Wayne Buttermore in 14th, Joaquin Effinger in 15th, Jacob Schilling in 16th, Aaron Bray in 17th, Mike Key in 18th, and then we have Joe Camilleri in 19th, Russ Lumberg in 20th, John Casey in 21st, Tim Preble in 22nd, Carlos Lopez Jr. in 23rd, Donnie Isley in 24th, unfortunately getting hit with the falling anvil today. Just behind him, another anvil hitter, Chris Montgomery, had some great pace, unfortunately, finishing down in 25th, 1 lap down. Tom Wient, also 6 laps down, Brad Cathcart 7 laps down, and Steven Tykska in last place, 8 laps down, Ron. Oh, you know what, actually, sorry, we have a couple more people there. No more finishers, though, so the rest, unfortunately, 10 laps down.
Some of these racers running into some difficulties, and includes but is not limited to Antonio Reese, Michelle Lynn, Miles Crabb, and Andrew Love. Saw Miles Crabb ballpark it there. First time we've seen a racer ballpark it thus far this season, at least for Group 3, but nevertheless still a fantastic race here at Sebring to kick this evening's racing action off. We're in for a pretty good one with the Spec Racer Forwards. I mean, they put on some pretty draft-heavy races as well, so I'm sure with that race coming up in the not-too-distant future, that gives you more of a reason to stay tuned here. Gonna take a brief little break, and then we'll be right back with the Spec Racer Forwards, who are looking to put on a fantastic fight at this same racetrack. Try and keep the streak going. We've had some brilliant races all throughout the season, and hey, the fun this evening is still far from over, and we'll be right back with some more fun after these messages.
Through dip 50, slowing crest 40, 1 left. Caution to 2 right short.
Introducing the Sim Motion Rally Sequential Shifter. Our shifter is specifically designed for sim racing enthusiasts who want to enhance their experience in the rally world using a push-pull system. Compatible with wheelbases like the Sim Magic Alpha series, B&M Direct Drive, Fanatic, and Simucube, and can easily be installed in minutes. It also has the adjustability to suit any wheel or driver's needs. It's also plug and play with titles like Dirt Rally, iRacing, and WRC. Available now at sim-motion.com. Sim Motion has teamed up with iRacing and V&M Simulation with an extreme prize package for Season 4. To win, paint any car with a Sim Motion logo, race in 10 official iRacing events, and you are entered to win an extreme direct drive and GT wheel bundle. But that's not all. Compete in the Formula 1600 Fixed Series, win your division, and you could score this set of pedals. Gear up and get racing. The rewards are waiting. With years of experience and a passion for customer service, SimMotion is a trusted name for SimMagic products. Whether you're just getting started or a seasoned pro, we have the gear to get you on the podium. At SimMotion, we don't just sell gear, we feel your passion for sim racing.
Alrighty, folks, welcome back to tonight's coverage here on Slow Motion Broadcasting of the Ray Esports Club Racing League. This is round 2 for group number 3 at Sebring, and this is race number 2 of the evening here for the Spec Racer Fords. The Formula V's put on a fantastic battle. That finish between Nicholas Rice-Puto and Gianni Maioro was possibly one of the best finishes I have seen. That absolute send from Rice-Puto, which didn't end up being successful, but was still fantastic to see. That's gonna stick with me for a while, but here with the Spec Racer Fords, we've got another great race to look forward to. Still in the midst of qualifying at the moment. Some lap times already set on the board with this qualifying session, very similar to what we saw in the Formula V's. 15 minutes long with 4 laps for these racers to try and get the job done. And as it stands currently, it's deja vu, folks, with Nicholas Rice-Puto currently sitting on the provisional pole. As it stands currently, he's 4/10 in front of Miles Crabbe in second. That's Jordan Rick-Sangrini running out your top 3. As it stands currently, Yanxi Lin it's been a little while since I commentated a race with Yan Shi in it. He's currently in 4th. He's currently at a 2-minute 21.573. The number is seeming to evade me during this broadcast right now, but still in the midst of this qualifying session right now. And I think at this point in time, some of these racers may be feeling the burn, so to speak. I mean, we had a fantastic race at Homestead not terribly long ago. Here at Sebring, though, maybe some of these racers feeling the pressure to put on an exciting race like we saw with the Formula Vs. And what a fantastic car to do it as well, Josh. You scored the championship in Spec 2 for the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors this past season. Congratulations, man, on that achievement. So I want to ask you and put you on the spotlight and just give us your thoughts on this car and track combination.
Yeah, this is honestly one, Ron, that I've really been looking forward to kind of tackle myself as well. Don't think I've actually taken this track on with the league in anger quite yet. I believe it may be on the schedule this year. I have my fingers crossed that it is, but I have a feeling these are going to be really fun around here. Once again, it is kind of a big track for these guys, and we're going to have a very similar sort of scenario we had with the Vs as well, because these draft similarly. I think pretty much the drafting hierarchy in iRacing goes V, and then SRF, and then maybe Radicals after that. But the V has probably the strongest. Their FRS probably has the second strongest, and we're going to see that on display here today as Jason Grider gets it wrong going into Sunset, wondering again if that has something to do with that new being able to pull dirt and stuff onto the track there. Those beads, those tire rubber beads, may have caught him out there, Ron. But back to the point, I think this is going to be kind of a similar race to the Vs. A little bit more, body and stuff on these cars, so you can actually kind of push people around a little more, get away with a little bit more. You can definitely bump draft as well, a lot easier. So that's going to be something we have to look out for. And I think we're going to have a pretty darn good race in these guys as well, Ron. Maybe not, they're a little bit wider as well, so maybe we can't get quite as wide, but these are very racy cars. They suit most tracks, in my opinion. It's kind of a beauty car because you can sort of race it anywhere. They have 6 gears. They top out, pretty high. You can kind of bring them anywhere, and I think this is going to be a pretty good race with these, as long as we can stay off those curbs.
Oh yeah, those curbs going to be a huge factor in deciding who's going to do well in this race. Probably taking the curbs a little bit better than the Formula Vs, but that's still that's a pretty rough comparison. It's like someone giving you 2 pieces of bread and having to pick what kind of poisonous mushroom you want to put on that sandwich. So really, these racers still going to be taking it easy all throughout this race that we have coming up. Much like the Formula Vs, got 30 minutes of racing action for these SRF racers to try and have fun with. I say try to have fun with. They're going to be enjoying it. Josh Justice may not have enjoyed his run heading out of Sunset Bend a couple of moments ago. Saw him pedaling that race car, heading through that section, hitting that dirt on the outside, and maybe having a whole lot of trouble a couple of moments ago. But a couple of moments ago, the qualifying session got drawn to a close, and we didn't really mention it too much because the qualifying order kind of shuffled around a little bit in the final stages of that 15-minute long session. Gonna get that starting grid loaded up for you right about now.
Not sure what decided to do there, but we'll have her up for you right away here.
Added some WD-40 onto the wrong part of the graphics.
There we go.
There we go. There's the starting grid. It's Jordan Rick-Sangrini, the Floridian man, the second driver tonight to be from Florida and grab the pole in a race at Sebring here for round number 2 for group number 3. But Sangrini in the 108 car going to be starting this race from the pole. That's going to be Yanchi Lin, the driver of the 30, going to join him on that front row. Nicholas Rice-Pudo, who we saw incredibly impressive in that first race with the Formula Vs. He's going to be starting in 3rd, next to Miles Crabb, who ballparked it in that Formula V race. Not hoping for a very similar performance here. Gianni Maioro certainly hoping for a similar performance. He grabbed the victory in those Formula Vs. Going to be hoping for some very similar luck here in the Spec Racer Fords, and he's going to be joined on that 3rd row. Andrew in the number 32. I will just leave it at that before I completely and utterly embarrass myself. Matt Thompson gonna be starting in 7th. David Perez in 8th. Skip Rock Jr. gonna be starting in 9th, and Josh Justice going to round out your top 10.
Yeah, and then we have in 11th Antonio Reese, Chuck Labano, who took 3rd in our last race there with the Vs. Moving on to TJ Preble in 13th, Brad Cathcart in 14th, Aaron Bray in 15th, Edgar Sankinelli in 16th. Looking for a little more out of him in this race, I think. He looks like maybe a little out of place. I expect him to move forward a little bit. Seth Spoolman in 17th, Tom Wheat in 18th, Tim Kriebel in 19th, Steven Tykska in 20th, Corey Heffron in 21st, 22nd is John Casey, 23rd is Ryan Campbell, and 24th is Jason Grider. We have a couple more left here. 25, Wayne Buttermore. 26, Mike Key. And in 27th place, we have Joaquin Effinger.
So that does it. 27 cars taking to the green flag in a couple of moments' time. I believe if we can ride on board with the driver of the number 32 car, the driver who I feel kind of bad mentioning. You know, I mean, based off the fact that I kind of do this stuff for a living, I am technically a professional at what I do. So this, I will attempt it. I believe it is Andrew Wisniewski, I believe would be the correct
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I think
Andrew,
you got it.
If you're tuning into this broadcast and we got it wrong, I apologize to you. We'll ride on board with him for a couple of moments' time, and a very nice looking race car, I gotta say. Always nice to see some red, white, and blue race cars out there on track. I remember in my karting days back in 2018, I decided to go red, white, and blue in my Sodi car. Now, if anyone's familiar with the world of like modern day karting, Sodi, their usual like livery is just about as far away as you can get from red, white, and blue as possible. They're usually black, silver, and orange. At least it was back when I bought. They basically mirrored the CRG color scheme. So going from that sort of color palette immediately to red, white, and blue was definitely an odd look for sure. Blue bodywork with some beautiful red and white pinstriping on there. Had an American flag on the front of the car. Very gorgeous looking race car. Josh, I may have to post some photos in the small little broadcast chat that we've got here at SMB. But very nice looking race car. I always like to see red, white, and blue on a race car. Josh, I think you may be a little bit different though, since you're Canadian and you Canucks have not added blue to your flag just yet.
Hey, I may be Canadian, Ron, but I love my U.S. brothers and sisters out there, and I love the Canadian flag. Of course, I'd probably have to say it's a pretty darn nice flag, but man, it's pretty hard to beat the Stars and Stripes, Ron, and that's just the way I feel about it. So that's what it is. I'm very proud of my Canadian heritage, but also very proud of my American and my American brothers and sisters out there as well. So I'd put them both up right beside each other, and that suits me just fine.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of $50 slid in Josh's pocket. But ready to get things up and rolling from this race with the Spec Racer Forwards. A little bit less participation than we saw in the Formula Vs, but nevertheless, still got a massive pack of race cars looking to grab the green in just a couple of moments' time. The field going to be in the hands of our pole sitter, Jordan Rick Sangrini, and I'm curious as to how he's going to go about this race. There's a whole lot of stuff that can happen between now and the checkered flag. May have some incidents. That run through turn number 1 is going to be oh so challenging for racers up and down this grid, but that pace car has made the turn down pit lane. The green flag is down. The drivers are on their way. It's a Floridian. Jordan Rick Sangrini in the 108 car gun trying to withstand any sort of challenge from Wanshi Lin on the outside line. They're side by side hanging off through turn number 1. Yanchi still trying to wheel it in that number 30 car. Look at Miles Crabb feeling racy as well. Nicholas Rice Puto jumping his way up into P2. Some rally action a little bit farther in the back. Side-by-side racing continuing here. Riding on board now at the moment with Andrew Wisniewski in that number 32 car. Currently running in 6th as it stands at the moment. Getting a fantastic view of the back of Miles Crabb running in 5th for the time being. But we got some battles up and down this grid. And some drivers already making up a lot of spots. Joaquin Effinger running down in 18th, already up 9.
Yeah, this is the time to do it, honestly. In the beginning, if you're there and you're ready for that gap to open up, you can make up a lot of positions in a group like this. We see Wanchi taking to the grass there to get out of the way. Some great collision avoidance there from Yanchi, living to fight another day here into another corner. Something you kind of have to do every once in a while is just take to that grass. If there's no wall there or anything, why not? It's better than not finishing the race. And we're going to get to see that new system working here in iRacing. Something actually we forgot to mention, Ron, is this car has actually seen a new tire model and a new suspension model as well. So we got some drivers out there dealing with not only the new the debris stuff on the track and everything, but as well as a tire model and a suspension model in this car as well. So it'd be pretty interesting to see how that plays out. Maybe some questions afterwards about how it felt.
Yeah, I think we may have to ask some of these racers about how they feel about everything with this race car. I know that iRacing updates can be pretty large. I will say, honestly, and it goes back to my schooling days of being very, very much a procrastinator. There we go, second try to charm on that pronunciation. About probably an hour before we went live, I finally remembered that iRacing had this big update, and it was 45 gigabytes. That's a spin for, I believe, Jason Grider, a little bit farther in the back. That's coming out of the second to last corner of Le Mans, going onto the Ullman straightaway, as we see the side-by-side racing here continuing, involving Preble. Looking at that from Perez, the dive heading off into the final corner. Well done. That was some pretty slick stuff. Certainly wasn't expecting that from David Perez in the 114 car, but he's still feeling quite racing. Got some three-wide action hang down the start-finish straightaway. Lots of drivers still battling hard, but the front two of Sangrini and Rice Puto starting to break away a little bit, as I think Yanshi Lin has gone off to a really troublesome start. He's now down in 10th. I think he and Antonio Rees may have had a little bit of a squabble, as they've dropped down roughly at the same pace, as now it looks like Josh Justice trying to get moved on the 2-for-1 deal, heading off into turn number 3, and he gets it done successfully. Well done, Josh Justice, coming out of the blue in the number 99.
Yeah, that was great. Just slip it right up the inside. See if we can't get a quick replay of that as well. You know, that's what we were talking about earlier. These cars are, you know, they're pretty big and boxy, and they take up a bit of road. So if you can find yourself a gap here while everybody else is kind of worried about what's going on beside them, like Josh did, yeah, you can find a couple places pretty easily in it. So that was a pretty slick move from Josh there for sure, and I would imagine, you know, that's how you're going to pick some stuff up here today. We get back to some live pictures here.
And here we are back to live action. Justice, oh no, I may have jinxed him.
Looks like a
He's
slowdown.
slow coming out of the hairpin. Yeah, I think it is a slowdown from Justice. The track limits around this racetrack, notoriously a little bit brutal. I mean, even just based off the severity of how these penalties can affect these racers, have a small little slowdown that could just snowball into a major loss of time. So that's tough for Justice. I will keep my mouth shut to prevent any more commentators' jinxes between now and the end of this race. Already 4 minutes on the board. Looking at some side-by-side racing continuing here. This is David Perez, who are following right now in the 114 car. He's feeling racy with Miles Crab. Crab now getting a move put on him by Preble. They're side-by-side hang off through turn number 15. Preble on that inside line, getting a little bit of the boot scoon boogie from the side of Miles Crab's race car. He gets shuffled out, so a little bit of damage on the front end of that number 16 car as well. Look at Yanshi Lin now sticking his toes in this fight as well. Here's the number 30 car. We're riding on board with the driver running in 9th. Will he be able to get this move done on Preble? Is he going to go for the 2-for-1 deal? Will he even go for the 3-for-1 deal? That'd be very rare and unheard of. Oh, and look
Crab
at
gets
Crab there.
dumped.
Another incident involving Miles Crab heading off through Sunset Bend. Looks like he avoids the barrier and avoids getting plopped into low Earth orbit as well. But Crab with some major damage on the back end of the race car. And look at this. These two playing a game of cat and mouse. Rice Puto and Rick Sangrini driving around the racetrack like it's going out of style. I mean, they paid for the track. They may as well use the whole thing. But that amount of weaving hanging down the start-finish straightaway is so insane. You'd expect some expert rope makers to try and look into hiring these two.
Absolutely, and I want to take a page out of one of my other announcer buddies there. He took the high, wide, and handsome line there out on the outside and made it work. Not something you can usually get done around there, especially with some marbles on the side of the road, but he made it stick, and not only did it look really good, but he's in pretty good position here as well, and it looks like these two, you know, maybe not working together, but are definitely pulling away from the pack, and I'm just wondering if they are going to work together here, and you know, if they can kind of put their differences aside here for the next 25 minutes or so and see if they can't work together to get away from the rest of this pack, because they have a chance to do it right now. And if they start fighting too hard, you're going to have Gianni and Skip Brock on their butt really soon. And that's not what you want around here, as we've seen before. You're going 4 wide, 5 wide. Really the only way you're going to... Oh, I thought for a second there maybe that Rasputo missed the corner there, but it looks like he's doing just fine. So yeah, you're going to want to make some good decisions out there. You're going to want to try to pull away from this pack if you can. And it does look like, actually, Ron, we've spread out pretty good around the track right now. I
think at this point in time, these racers trying to settle into some sort of groove you can see up towards the front of this field. You've got Sangrini and Rice Pudo covered by barely any air. Then you have to go 3 seconds back to a fight involving Mayuro and Skip Rock Jr. Then you have to go another second back to Wisniewski and Yanshi. Actually, no, Wisniewski kind of running all by himself. Have to go back another second and a half to find Yanshi Lin involved in this fight with himself and David Perez. Then I have to go a little bit farther back to Antonio Reese, who finds himself locked steady in a very close fight between himself, Josh Justice, Matt Thompson, and then you have to go 2 seconds back to Spallman, who's running in 11th. So a little bit spread out towards the front of this field. A lot less vacuum sealed together like we saw in the Formula V's, but that was a pretty insane standard to set anyways. But right now, looking at Sangrini and Rice Pudo swapping positions yet again. Those two, they've been trading blows like a bunch of boxers thus far. Let's see if it continues side by side. Heading through turn number 1, Rice Pudo trying to withstand that fight, hold off any sort of fight on Rick Sangrini. Sangrini trying to remain in that spot. Let's see, is it going to go the way of Rick Sangrini? For now, it will. Heading off through turn number 3, Rice Pudo backs out of it. He's certainly giving it his all, though. At this point in time, though, Sangrini proving what may be a big factor in deciding who's going to win this race, Josh, as much as these cars very draft heavy, and you will have side-by-side fights heading off into all manners of corners, maybe even into turn number 7. I feel like the defensive game going to be a big factor in deciding who's going to be victorious in this race. Rice put on the inside of Sangrini, heading through turn number 7 right now. He's still withstanding that challenge, so well done from Jordan Rick Sangrini in that 108 car. This has been a defensive masterclass for him thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to be scoffed at for sure. Putting up a good defense is very difficult, and being able to hold on to the outside here again, he's going to try again for that wide line and does it again. So, you know, he's definitely got some skills in that SRF in there, finding those lines and being able to keep that defense up. And we were mentioning before, though, all this defense, Ron, is slow. Every time you have to go really wide like that and cut the corner and not make the proper line, you're slowing down. And as you can see here, that is starting to bring that pack into the fight. We know people like Yan Shilin, as well as Skip Rock Jr. and Andrew they have the speed, and they're going to catch up to these guys if they keep squabbling like this back and forth. So it's a little bit surprising to me, honestly, that Nicholas continues to try to pass around the outside and making every corner an issue, because all that's doing is pulling these people back into the fight. If you ask me, I think he should be playing ball with him right now. We shouldn't be worrying about weaving. We should be pushing each other to get away from these other drivers. But, you know, as an announcer, as a viewer, this is really only going to bring more people into the fight, so it's good for us.
Yeah, it's good for us from our perspective in the commentary booth. Certainly not going to be good for either of these racers. They're side by side heading through Sunset Bend. This is not going to help out either of their causes. Look at this right now. Look at the left-hand side with the wonderful graphics that we have here on SMB. 3.9 seconds. I have a pretty sneaking suspicion that that is going to be dipped way down come time for the end of this race. But Rice Pudo and Sangrini still side by side heading off through turn number 1. They're not giving up. Rice Pudo isn't giving up, and I think honestly, Josh, I am absolutely with you. There comes a certain point in time where if you are Nicholas Rice Pudo, you got to give up. I mean, not give up per se, but take it easy, take a break, take a chill pill, whatever saying you want to use. Rice Pudo may need to consider it, because at this point in time, all he's doing is just burning up his stuff and giving Jordan Rick Sangrini some opportunity to try and learn from how Rice Pudo is going to tackle the end of this race. Rice Pudo, who's now trying to get the move done down the inside, heading off through turn number 7. A little bit sideways there from Sangrini. That is some close quarters racing between Jordan Rick Sangrini and Nicholas Rice Pudo. Who's going to win out in this fight? We've seen these two be side by side like 15 times a lap. They were side by side yet again on this lap, but this may be the best opportunity that Nicholas Rice Pudo has gotten yet in that 18 car. But the 108 of Jordan Rick Sangrini still going to withstand that challenge, gets it done and holds him off around the outside through Cunningham of turn number 10. Look at Rice Pudo, though. That's an odd line heading off through turn 12 into Tower Bend right now. Nicholas Rice Pudo, at this point in time, he is not giving up. He is still fighting this, and I said at the start of this spiel. That 3.9 second gap, when I started this off, it was more like 4.3 seconds. Savor it, because it was going to go down. With all that squabbling, it's now down to 2.8. Rasputo, as much as he's trying to get that move done on Jordan Rick-Sangrini, he's causing himself a lot more grief than he really should.
Absolutely. That was over a full second loss in lap time there from the people behind them for that lap. And it looks like behind here, they're not really squabbling too much. I haven't seen them go side by side except for the straightaway, whereas Rick Screeney and Rasputo are going side by side almost every lap, or sorry, every corner of the track. And that's just going to slow you down a bunch. So it is kind of surprising me a little bit that they're fighting so hard up front, but that's racing at the same time. It's really hard to just kind of calm those dogs down sometimes. You want to be in front. Maybe, he thinks he has a little bit more pace and he's just going to keep putting it on him. But honestly, by lap 6, I would think that you sort of have that sorted out and you realize, okay, we're around the same pace. Let's play together here. See if we can't keep these guys off our butt and move forward. But man, they're just going to fight every corner, every lap. And that's just good for us and the viewers here. And I'm loving the defense that's being put up here. Just spectacular.
Yeah, and looking at some defensive maneuvers, Yanxi Lin running in that final podium position for now in third as Mayuro and Brock go side by side, heading all through 4, 5, and 6 right now. Looking at that was near disaster for the driver of the number 32 car, Andrew Wisniewski. That could have ended in tears, making a little bit of contact with Skip Brock Jr. Very lucky that car didn't end up spearing into the outside tire barrier. Getting the 2-for-1 deal done, heading off into turn number 7.
Beauty move.
Well done. Oh my God, that was a terrible voice crack.
No, it was good. Lots of emotion on that one for sure because it was such a sick move. That was great. 2 lengths back, you really, really have to be confident into that corner.
Of a deflating balloon.
It's bumpy and it's hard to kind of find that brake zone, and he found it perfectly there. Unfortunately, a little bit on the exit, and when you do kind of go really hard on entry like that, you're always going to lose slightly on the exit, and ended up kind of getting one of those positions taken back. But great move there into the hairpin.
Yeah, a great move and possibly the worst voice crack I've ever had on the air. I gotta say, I had to listen back to that. I am so glad for this microphone because it registered that as such a high frequency thing that I think Discord noise cancellation canceled that out. So crisis averted. I am good to go for the rest of this show. I mean, I still have this excuse for the next 9 days. I am still technically a teenager, so I can say that I'm more susceptible to voice cracks than some other people, but at the same time, it really should not be a factor. I am 19, I'm a grown adult, so I really should not be sounding like a rusty gate creaking in the wind as we see Nicholas Rasputo finally getting the move done on Rick Sangrini, or has he gotten it done? Looking at that from Jordan wheeling it on the inside line. What is it? I don't know what it is for Jordan Rick Sangrini. This is going to be a very bad comparison. I apologize to Jordan in advance. It's like, how you always hear about it, how cockroaches are unkillable even in the event of a nuclear blast. Jordan Rick Sangrini holding on to the lead of this race, even through off-track excursions like that, and Nicholas Rasputo getting those moves done on him. He has been untouchable. He's been unkillable thus far in this race. He's been the cockroach that no one wants to step on.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely out there. I'm honestly very impressed the way he's able to take those wide lines and be able to come back in with the speed. So he's clearly got some skills on this SRF and around this track as well. Maybe we'll switch out the cockroaches for, what else could we use? Like Twinkies or something, right? They never die. For some reason, you could go through an apocalypse and there would still be Twinkies in that thing. They'd still be edible. Maybe that's a little better than a cockroach, but good analogy nonetheless.
Well, I mean, I'm from the city of Philadelphia. I'm more experienced with cockroaches and Twinkies. Side by side now with Rasputo and Rick Sangrini heading off now through Cunningham. Has he finally gotten the move done? Nicholas Rasputo has been hacking away at this for so long, to invoke some more Pennsylvania terminology. Been like a coal miner all throughout this race. He keeps on digging, but he's finally gotten some coal in his bag. He is finally making his way up into the lead. So well done. Took him a little while, but he finally got the move done. And that's nothing against Nicholas Rasputo. We saw in that Formula V race, and as we're seeing in the Spec race or Ford race as well. Blisteringly quick racer. He is a fast driver. But I don't know what it is. Jordan Rixagrini was just putting on a brilliant defensive masterclass all throughout this race. It's still maybe going to continue, but now that we've broken past the halfway mark, it was the Segrini show all throughout that first half. Let's see if it's a Rice Pudo show throughout the second.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to continue to swabble here. Even in that lap while we were speaking about it, you know, they're right on each other's butt the whole time. So I would imagine, Ron, that at this point, if Jordan's thinking in the car, he's going to kind of take his time here. He knows that Nicholas has been just hounding every lap, and all they're doing is losing time doing that. So I would imagine we're going to see him kind of file in here. Maybe he'll take a little stab here and there. See, he's even pushing him now. So he's started to realize, okay, we're getting caught up here. Yanqi Lin is one of the fastest SRF drivers on planet Earth, and if you give him a chance, he's going to find it. And if you squabble with each other in the front, he's going to catch you. He might even catch you otherwise. So I think these two are going to have to work together, honestly, to keep Yanqi off them. And you know, with any luck there, Yanqi will actually bring maybe some other people with him into this fight too, and we can have a bit of a bigger one by the end. But there are a couple more other packs in the track here that we will also have a look at, Ron.
Yeah, to what degree are we going to have a hornet's nest at the end of this race? That still remains to be determined. Gotta say, we're following Josh Justice right now, but my attention is on the car in front of him of Miles Crab. You can see that car, I don't think he's crabbing heading down any sort of straightaways, but there's definitely some significant damage on the rear end of that race car. So I'm getting involved in an incident towards the start. And ever since then, he's put on a pretty rousing recovery drive, currently running in P7, so pretty well held from him. Got to take a look at a replay to see some drama involving Crab earlier on in this race in the 131 car. You can see him closing up there. You can see nearly running into the runoff area. That right there is the old layout of the hairpin of turn number 7 around Sebring. But here was the drama that caught Crab out. That could have ended in disaster a couple of moments ago. Here's what did end in disaster. Side-by-side racing, a little bit of contact, a nudge from Yanqi Lin that sends Miles Crab off the track. Not sure who that was, the other car involved in that. They've had to tow back to pit lane, and I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, that was the number 2 of TJ Preble. But either way, Crab, despite the fact he's got that damage on the back end of that race car, still running quite strong, despite the fact the rear clip is shorn by probably about 8 inches.
Yeah, it's looking like, you know, he's got a little extra downforce on the right side of the car there, or the left side of the car from that. But, you know, as long as you can stay in the draft of another car with these things, it doesn't really matter, which doesn't really suit him at the moment because he's not in a draft, but it looks like he's going to be soon once Josh gets in front of him. And then, you know, as long as you can kind of stick with the car in front of you, that little bit of damage doesn't really matter much. What you don't want in this car is a bent front end or a front clip missing, because then it's just a wall basically for the air to hit, and it's really, really hard. Even then, you can sometimes make up some time in the draft as well. But we're also getting some stuff from our chat here as well. Michelle Lynn saying, if these two don't wise up, Yanqi's going to be in there. And yep, 100%, I agree with you. We were just mentioning it there as well. I think that's probably true. And if these two don't kind of start to work with each other here, which it seems like they have, Yanqi's going to have their number pretty quick.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say that unless there's some sort of major calamity between these two, I'm not sure if Yanqi Lin is going to have enough time, so we'll just have to wait and see. Hey, maybe Michelle's a little bit biased. Yanqi Lin being supported by Michelle Lin. Different spelling entirely, but you know,
I didn't even think of that.
Maybe correlation equals causation there. I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely whacked out, a little bit tired, possibly. Who knows? I still think the 3.5 seconds, that's still a pretty significant margin for Yanqi Lin to try and close up. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Yanqi. I have called some beautiful finishes with him. I remember a couple of seasons ago with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, he and Christian Kabanka, who I know he's another Philadelphia native, I believe. It would be nice to see him back out on the racetrack. I know he's taking a small little break from the other Weekend Warriors and Ray Esports World. So, Christian, if you're watching this broadcast by any chance, I hope to see you out on the racetrack again in the not-too-distant future, man, because he and Yanqi Lin put on a fantastic fight at Imola a couple of seasons ago with the Formula Fords. So, Yanqi, a very fast racer. I mean, he's won the SCCA iRacing runoffs, so he's a very quick driver. And I believe, unless I am very much mistaken, you'll be catching him on the Racing Line podcast, I believe, next week as well. So Yanqi, if he does win this race, he's going to have to talk have to talk everyone through how he was able to keep his nose to the grindstone and be able to close up that gap. Right now, though, Rick Sagrini is closing up that gap between himself and Nicholas Rice-Puda. As I said that, though, balloons back out to 0.3 of a second. Those two cars, though, were covered by barely any air a couple of moments ago, less than a half of a tenth as well between those two not terribly long ago, as we see a side-by-side fight that was going on between Andrew Wisniewski and Skip Brock Jr. Looks like they've stayed line of stern, as I think there may have been an off-track moment involving Josh Justice. He just lost out on a little bit of time, I think, heading through the final quarter. May have just gotten shuffled out because of some positions lost. Looks like he hasn't lost out on too much time, so I think it may have just been a simple loss of time. But either way, Justice, who's a real-life Spec racer, Ford racer, had some pretty good runs at Homestead to kick the season off. Not having the same fortune here at Sebring, but still 2 top 10s certainly won't turn that down.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, these are a bit of a march, these ones, so it's not all about one race. You're going to have a few races here to make things happen. Obviously, you don't want to, end up DNFing or something like that at all, but he's already got some in the bag here, so he's got a chance at this stuff, and he wants to try to get as many positions as he can. It looks like potentially here he may have a run by the end on these two drivers in front of him, but he's going to have to play his cards right, and Miles Crabb really punching above his weight here with a bit of damage on his car here is pretty impressive as well. You're mentioning the Racing Line podcast, one you definitely want to pick up on last week's there with Edgar Sancinelli. Was a great episode, always good to get to know the drivers out there that we're driving with and so on. It's really cool to be able to get to know these guys, and that's what the Racing Line podcast is all about, so make sure to check that out on Tuesday nights. We really very cool to see Yanqi Lin if they're in there. If that is the next guest, as we still have these two front drivers here nearing the end of the race, starting to get a little bit more racy again, Ron. It looks like perhaps Rick Sagrini has decided it is time.
Yeah, is he going to be sizing up the final move to take the lead of this race? If he gets it done in the next few laps, I should say, in the next, 3 minutes, shall we say, is that going to be the last move? I have a feeling that it may not. We still got 7 minutes left to go. Anything could happen between now and the checkered flag. For all we know, these two cars can go off in a cloud of dust and steam, and Yanqi Lin going to be doing what Michelle Lin kind of predicted and take the checkered flag. We never know. That's the thing with these Spec Racer Ford races. You never know how it's going to be until you see those race cars come out of the final corner. And even then with some photo finishes, you don't know what it's going to be like until they cross that start-finish line to take that checkered flag. But Rice-Puda still leading it over Rick Sagrini in P2. Evenly matched time-wise there, and Yanqi Lin actually tracking a little bit slower than the two, a little bit farther up the road. In terms of best laps, though, I'm curious if we could pull that graphic up real quick. Josh, it looks like pretty much as we'd usually expect. Yanqi Lin setting the fastest lap of the race, currently at a 2-minute 20.033. But up in the front, Rice-Puda surprisingly, this is surprising to me, Josh. I don't know if it is for you. Rice-Puda, 0.4 of a second slower than Rick Sangrini's fastest lap. I don't know about you, but that's a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah, it's one of those things, again, where the car behind is always going to be faster than the car in front. So if you're leading the whole time, the car behind you has the ability to have the fastest lap over and over and over again every lap, whereas you don't. You have to find a way by. So I think what's happening here probably is you're getting that run down the straight, which is kind of sort of inflating, let's say, his overall lap time. So you're going to get into those twisty bits where they're almost dead even, and then they get out to that straight, and he picks up a few tenths and is able to kind of put it on the board before the line. And that's sort of a common occurrence with the SRFs. I have seen a few races where, even a guy in 3rd, 4th, 5th place has put the fastest lap in, and the guy, in the front, not always the fastest lap. Maybe a little bit rare to see it quite as pronounced as this, but I think that's probably the theory behind it, Ron.
Oh, you could see those two bump drafting. Okay, this is maybe my road course side of things peeking through, but whenever I see bump drafting, even in an oval context, I usually get a little bit tensed up. I can best describe it as like my bones are soaking in vinegar or something like that. It's just, there's a little sense of discomfort whenever I see some Spec Racer Ford cars bump drafting. I mean, Josh,
yeah.
I'm sure on your way to the Spec 2 Weekend Warriors Spec Racer Ford Championship, probably had to do a little bit of bump drafting. I'm not sure what I was about to say there with
little jump bumps, yep.
front
Both.
passing. There we go. Yeah, both work. Both are apropos as we see a swap-a-roo between Rick Sagrini and Rice Pudo. Rice Pudo running wide through the final corner. That may end up being the move that grabs the victory for Rick Sagrini. I say that anything could happen. We could still see these two swap positions about 7 times between now and the checkered flag. But the point that I was going to raise, Josh, and kind of leads to a question that I have for you. Probably had some experience doing a little bit of bump drafting, receiving some bump drafts, and giving some bump drafts as well. Is it a little bit tense in the car whenever that's going on? Because the Spec Racer Ford, as much as those front and rear bumpers kind of align somewhat well, they're still not really designed like an oval car to bump.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, to be honest, Ron, every time, you know, I'm still fairly new to the SRFs too. And, you know, every time I think about coming up to bump draft someone, it's almost kind of like, you know, when there's a stranger in front of you or something and you kind of need to turn them around to say hi to them and it's a little bit awkward or something. And that's kind of what it feels like. You want to get in there and you want to make sure you're helping them, not hurting them. And it's so easy to just hit a little bit too hard and rumple the back end of their car or give them a 4X or you know, maybe even worse, wreck your own car in the process as well. So there is certainly an art to it. You need to be able to do it well and do it in the right spots. Not everybody does it very well, and I can definitely say, Ron, you're definitely onto it there for sure. The tension level goes up, the blood pressure goes up a little bit, the clench level goes up slightly when you see somebody kind of edging into the back of you and you're like, oh boy, you better get this right. Especially if you just happen to be floating on an incident limit or something like that. It can be pretty scary. So it's definitely an art form out there and something you got to get good at. Not something I'm super great at yet, but great question, Ron.
It's a balancing act. I think that's the best way to describe it. You got to balance a whole lot of things when it comes to these racers. I've said this a whole lot when it comes to either Spec Racer Ford, Formula Ford, or Formula V Weekend Warriors broadcast. And the same goes for the Ray Esports Club Racing League, which you can catch every single Wednesday here exclusively on Slow Motion Broadcasting. But that's the thing. It's like a big game of chess played at over 100 miles an hour. You got so much on your mind as you're whittling the laps away. Second tries the charm there. My old speech impediment that I had as a kid coming back to bite me on the hind end a couple of moments ago. But you got all the action going on track, but you also got about 14 bajillion thoughts running through your mind about how to tackle a corner, how to drive this race car as quick as you possibly can, size up your competitors, and think of going for a move. Not to mention in the Weekend Warriors broadcast with a Weekend Warriors Spec Racer Ford races, got to worry about pit stops as well, which thankfully these racers will not have to deal with in this 30-minute race that we are drawing to a conclusion to. The white flag is in the air, and with that, the purple letters are in, the purple numbers really are in for Nicholas Rice Pudo, who just clocked in an absolute stormer of a lap. First driver to break below the 2-minute 20 barrier, and he goes to a 2-minute 19.974, which is the quickest lap time, I believe, in this entirety of this iRacing session by a quite significant margin. Rick Zagrini's qualifying time to put him on the pole was a 2-minute 20.7. So I'm not sure what kind of Cuisinarts that Nicholas Rice Pudo kicked on a couple of moments ago to set a 2:19, but that's blisteringly quick, and what a time to do it as well. We're on the white flag. Only one more lap of racing action for Jordan Rick Sagrini and Rice Pudo to try and grab this checkered flag. Yanchi Lin, as much as these two may have given him a little bit of hope, looks like it's not going to come up well for Yanchi Lin. Still running in third at the moment, running effectively in no man's land, so doubt very highly there's going to be a major turn of events for Lin, unless these two come to blows, which, considering the near disaster they had into Sunset Bend about halfway through this race, I certainly wouldn't rule that at all, Josh. But Rick Sagrini leading them, heading through turn 14. This is 14 of Bishop, this section here, going out of what feels like the purpose-built section, back on to the airport section of Sebring. A wild ride in the world of motorsports, a bumpy ride to be sure. The bumps maybe going to be a big factor in deciding who's going to finish well in this race.
That damage on his nose is going to hurt him right here, I think.
Yeah, and you could see him weaving. He's a little bit desperate. You could see that front left tire peeking out from the front clip a little bit, and this is going to be the shot that Rice
they're
Pudo
leaning
won.
on each other.
Looking at that, they're linked together, side to side, conjoined at the hip, heading down the almond straightaway. Not sure what that was. That was not clever from Rice Pudo, and it's not going to work out for him as Jordan Rixagrini in the 108 car going to take the checkered flag. But Nicholas Rice Pudo, I'm not sure whether that was Rixagrini being the aggressor in all of that or Rice Pudo being the aggressor. But either way, those two linking together, it looked like the finish of a NASCAR restrictor plate race more than a Spec Racer Ford race. I think we're going to take a look at a couple of angles of replays of that, Josh, because that was very odd. Take a look at that. Some odd tactics coming out at the end of this race. It's still not over yet for some of the racers a little bit farther in the back. This Brad Cathcart in the 905 car that we're following right now, maybe going to set up a fantastic side-by-side photo finish with himself and Bray. Not going to be close enough. Those two round at your top 13. But Josh, I think we have to take a look at several angles of that finish, because that threw me for a loop at the time. I wasn't really sure what I was seeing. Usually you'd see a move like that in a restrictor plate race. Looked like the two of them were just turning into each other. I'm not really sure how to make heads or tails of that, Josh.
Yeah, it looked like from their steering inputs there that they were not turning into each other. I think you may be right. There is this sort of phenomenon like we like to call iracing glue. And it looks like perhaps maybe that's what happened. I'm not going to go ahead and go quite as far out on a limb and say that it wasn't intentional that they got together, because it looked very intentional that they were leaning shoulders on each other. But I don't think it was an intentional thing for them to stay stuck together like that for as long as they did. But let's have one more quick look at it here, Ron, and see if we can't decipher a little more. I'll let you have a quick look here.
Yeah, I'm going to try and figure out what the deal was with these two. Riding on board with Jordan Rixagrini in the 108 car, you can see he was weaving like a maniac, worried about that front end damage. Yeah, I think those two were just turning into each other more than anything else.
You're right,
that
Ron.
was... You could definitely tell that those two were like, hey, I'm going to push you away. And then the other one's like, no, I'm going to push you away. And those two, it's like what happens when unstoppable force meets an immovable object, just bang, just grinding the metal or grinding the plexiglass, whatever these Spec Racer Ford race car body panels are made out of. Either way, certainly giving each other some paint chips and some war wounds from this race, a race which, when everything is said and done, is won by Jordan Rixagrini. And I gotta say, as much as Rice Pudo may have had the pace advantage, Rixagrini just had that defensive masterclass from start to finish, and I think that was what won it out for him here in this Spec Racer Ford race. Gonna get those results loaded up in just a couple of moments' time from a really peculiar Spec Racer Ford race. I say peculiar as if it's a bad thing. Also a pretty action-packed race from start to finish. Some battles up and down the grid. Wasn't expecting it to be as spread out as it was at the front, though. So that's kind of definitely going against what I thought that this race was going to consist of. But one driver who I guess must have felt very confident in his pace as he grabbed the pole, he converts it to a victory. Jordan Rixagrini takes the checkered flag in the 108 car. Remove the 0 from that, drop down to 0.2 of a second. You find Nicholas Rice Pudo finishing in P2. Yanshi Lin finishes a little bit farther back, only 3.5 seconds away from Rixagrini, our winner. He rounds out your podium in third. Then we have Johnny Maioro, who was not able to get the double. Won in the Formula V's earlier on, does not win in the Spec Racer Fords, but a fourth place result still pretty good for the driver of the number 16 car. Skip Rock Jr. going to round out your top 5. Then we have Andrew Wisniewski in the number 32 car going to finish in 6th. Miles Crabb finishes in 7th with a whole lot of damage on that race car as well. Commendable drive from the driver of the 131. Joshua Just is going to finish in 8th, Antonio Reese in 9th, and Chuck Labano, the Canadian behind the wheel, the number 12, going to round out your top 10. Then we have Seth Spolman in 11th, Aaron Bray finishing in 12th, Brad Cathcart in 13th, Edgar Sanchinelli in 14th, Corey Heffron going to round out your top 15.
My mic was off again. In 16th place, we have John A. Casey, Wayne Buttermore in 17th, Matt Thompson in 18th with a pretty good showing there. Looks like we had a bunch of people have a bit of attrition here today, so not an easy race to finish. Everybody got out there and finished today fairly clean, so that's a good one for him. Tim Preble in 19th, Jason Grider in 20th, who we saw have a bit of an incident at the beginning of the race there. Mike Key in 21st, Ryan Campbell in 22nd, David Perez in 23rd, Tom Wendt in 24th, Joaquim Effinger in 25th, TJ Preble in 26th, Steven Tykska in 27th. And I believe that rounds out our field for today, Ron. Not a bad race out there with a bit of a peculiar end, but I'm not really sure I'd call a blocking or a penalty on that, would you?
I don't think I would call a penalty on that because, I mean, it's an odd tactic to be sure. I have some experience doing some race control, and funnily enough, Chuck Labano, I believe, is one of the drivers in the series I usually do race control with on Monday nights. If I was in race control for something like this, I would probably pull those two aside and be like, hey, that worked out pretty well for the both of you. Finish exactly where you were when that contact was made. So it didn't really work out for the both of them. I don't think it would be a penalty, though. Maybe just a slap on the wrist more than anything else. But, you know, these racers, they're going to try and wheel their race cars as best as they can and have some odd tactics to be sure when it comes to these Spec Racer Fords. When you have that draft, it's so powerful that's basically indefensible. You gotta have some stuff like that happen from time to time. Didn't really work out for either of them, though. Rice Pudo, he still finished in second. Jordan Rixagrini probably gave himself more damage than was worth, but he still takes a checkered flag in first and caps off a really good night of racing action here for round number 2 for group number 3 of the Ray Esports Club Racing League. And as we heard in that small low break between the Formula V race and the Spec Racer Fords, this series and these broadcasts would simply not be possible if it weren't for some very generous support, because tonight's broadcast of the Ray Esports Club Racing League on Slow Motion Broadcasting is brought to you by SimMotion. SimMotion is a store by sim racers for sim racers, carrying everything from bond boxes and steering wheels and the best brands from the sim racing world, including SimMagic, Mosa, Husingveld, and many, many more. With decades of experience in the industry, SimMotion is a great choice for sim racers in both North America and Europe looking to upgrade their simulators. If you'd like to check out what SimMotion has to offer, go to us.sim-motion.com. That's us.sim-motion.com. SimMotion is not only the sponsor of the official Formula 1600 series here on iRacing, but is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Club Racing League, and feel free to use discount code RAY5 at checkout for some very sweet discounts. And speaking of sweet, we got some sweet racing action coming up in the not too distant future here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. The next race for the Ray Esports Club Racing League, round 3 for group number 1, is going to see the Mazdas and the TCRs tackle the very fun racetrack of Virginia International Raceway in just 1 week's time. But between then and now, we've got the Ray Esports Week 14 UK Tour Special, going to be ringing in the holidays with some nice Christmassy looking liveries and some pretty good racing at 3 fantastic tracks in the UK. So all that and more to look forward to here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. If you never want to miss out on any of the racing action, you should probably hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the action. But Josh, the action came in spades here tonight. Final thoughts before we wrap things up.
Yeah, what a great race from both classes today for sure. I was really interested to see how the SRFs were going to race around here, and definitely taking some notes for when I finally get out there around this track and can do some wheeling around it as well. Everybody keeping it fairly clean. We had a little bit of attrition, and we saw a couple new winners and stuff today as well as some new drivers and stuff in there too, which I should remind everyone, you can come out and race with us on these races. It is a club racing league, but there is an open entry, so you can come and race with us. Make sure you have a look at Ray Esports online and our Discord and everything else, and you can come race with us as well. So yeah, I think that was a great race, great double feature tonight, Ron, and looking forward to the next one.
And the next one, as I alluded to, is going to be coming up in 1 week's time for round 3 for group number 1, the Mazda Mania and the TCRs. That's going to be a really good night of racing action to look forward to in just 1 week's time. But as for tonight's racing action, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Josh Wilkie working the comms and the cams with me on tonight's broadcast, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all again wherever it is in the not too distant future. The green flag is down. The drivers are on their way, looking at a pretty even field start with both of our front row sitters, Michelle Spork and that number 75 Porsche. Gonna try and lead them off through turn number 1. However, got a challenge from Crab on the outside. However, he's got 3-wide fight on his hands now between himself, Kyle Robertson, and Jake Sneddon. Looks like those drivers are gonna try and single file out with a spinner farther in the back. That's one of the Aston Maunz going for a spin. Not sure who that is. That, I believe, may be Tyler Heron in the number 11 car. He is going off the circuit, hang through turn number 1, so that's not an ideal start for him. All right, losing out on 6 spots, but as you can see the field coming out of turn number 5, under the bridge through 6 for the first time by. They're going to be bending the 4-pan in these race cars. Who's going to win it, though? Is it going to be Jordan Rixangrini? Is it going to be Huffman, though, in that number 89 car? Look at Burkhardt with a final challenge. Burkhardt going to win it at the number 40 car with a late challenge, making contact with Miles Crab after the checkered flag. Burkhardt coming back in a comeback of a lifetime to win it. Coming to the checkered flag this time by Montgomery has a gap over Justice and Rice Pudo, but the real question is, will he be able to hold on to that? You can see that gap closing. Rice Pudo gonna try to get the move done. A little bit of contact with himself and Justice heading through the high banks. This is going to be a race to the checkered flag. A photo finish. Justice on that outside line. Rice Pudo cutting to the inside. Montgomery going to be the meat in that sandwich and coming to take the checkered flag. Winning this race is going to be the number 99 car of Joshua Justice.
Wow.
He's made up 11 spots thus far. Is he going to try and make it 12 on? Nichols are going to be side by side, hang under the bridge, down into the hairpin of turn number 7. Nichols on that inside line. He's got to carry a whole lot of speed into the corner. Josh Soto in that sneaky McLaren. Going to try and find any sort of way to get around him. And you can see a little bit of blocking between these two. Heading through Fangio now. There's turn number 9, the very quick corner. But look at Nichols losing out on the time. Look at Soto trying to get a 2-for-1 deal around the outside through into turn number 10 of Cunningham. Looking at that from Soto, gonna wheel it on the inside through Collier Bend of turn number 11, and Joshua Soto pulling off a masterful drive to get one move done, but he's still trying to fight hard with Will Pierre for that second position. You can see him side by side coming out of Tower Bend of turn 13. This is a drag race between these two now. It looks like Soto in that slippery McLaren is going to slip his way past Soto. Gave it his everything, and he was able to get that move done. Looking at a crash involving the 2 Porsches, though. Murphy Nichols in that 5 car tried to go for the move heading into turn number 15, but just a bit too opportunistic, and a bad rejoin there. Gonna take out, I believe.
Slowing crest, 40, 1 left. Caution to 2 right short to 5.
Introducing the Sim Motion Rally Sequential Shifter. Our shifter is specifically designed for sim racing enthusiasts who want to enhance their experience in the rally world using a push-pull system. Compatible with wheelbases like the Sim Magic Alpha series, V&M Direct Drive, Fanatic, and Simicube, and can easily be installed in minutes. It also has the adjustability to suit any wheel or driver's needs. It's also plug and play with titles like Dirt Rally, iRacing, and WRC. Available now at sim-motion.com. Sim Motion has teamed up with iRacing and V&M Simulation with an extreme prize package for Season 4. To win, paint any car with a Sim Motion logo, race in 10 official iRacing events, and you are entered to win an extreme direct drive and GT wheel bundle. But that's not all. Compete in the Formula 1600 Fixed Series, win your division, and you could score this set of pedals. Gear up and get racing. The rewards are waiting. With years of experience and a passion for customer service, SimMotion is a trusted name for SimMagic products. Whether you're just getting started or a seasoned pro, we have the gear to get you on the podium. At SimMotion, we don't just sell gear, we feel your passion for sim racing.
The green flag's down, the drivers are on their way, looking at a pretty even keel start with both of our front row sitters, Michelle Spork and that number 75 Porsche.